Welcome to the Homeland Security and Emergency Management online training course, The History and Overview of the REP Program. This training module will begin with the history of the 3 Mile Island incident and the establishment of the REP Program. After that, we will discuss the importance of Minnesota Chapter 12 and what that means for the REP Program in Minnesota. From there, we will look at our 2 nuclear power plants and all the entities that make up the REP Program in our state. The accident at 3 Mile Island was the incident that touched off a series of events that ultimately led to the establishment of the Radiological Emergency Preparedness Program. It all began about 4 a.m. on March 28, 1979, when a relatively minor malfunction in the secondary cooling circuit caused the temperature in the primary coolant to rise. This in turn caused the reactor to shut down automatically. At this point, a relief valve failed to close, but instrumentation did not reveal that, and so much of the primary coolant drained away that the residual decay heat in the reactor core was not removed. The core suffered severe damage as a result. In the afternoon of March 28th, hydrogen gas gathered at the top of the reactor vessel. From March 30th through April 1st, operators removed this hydrogen gas bubble by periodically opening the vent valve on the reactor cooling system pressurizer. For a time, NRC officials believed the hydrogen gas bubble could explode, though such an explosion was never possible since there was not enough oxygen in the system. When the accident at 3 Mile Island is recalled, it is often in the context of what happened with the gas bubble on Friday and Saturday of March 30th and 31st, as this news report from Friday, March 30th, 1979 indicates.
This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. The world has never known a day quite like today. It faced the considerable uncertainties and dangers of the worst nuclear power plant accident of the atomic age. And the horror tonight is that it could get much worse. It is not an atomic explosion that is feared. The experts say that is impossible. But the specter was raised of perhaps the next most serious kind of nuclear catastrophe, a massive release of radioactivity. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission cited that possibility with an announcement that, while it is not likely, the potential is there for the ultimate risk of a meltdown at the 3 Mile Island atomic power plant outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Robert Shackney reports from Washington.
Two weeks after the accident at 3 Mile Island, the Kemeny Commission was set up to investigate the incident. The report was issued in October of that same year. Their heaviest criticism concluded that to prevent nuclear accidents as serious as 3 Mile Island, fundamental changes will be necessary in the organization, procedures, and practices, and above all, in the attitudes of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. In addition, the Kemeny Commission report recommended that FEMA be responsible for reviewing and approving off-site radiological planning. So in December of 1979, President Carter transferred the federal lead role in off-site REP activities from the NRC to FEMA. In turn, FEMA established a REP program to ensure that the public health and safety around nuclear power plants would be adequately protected. It is important to remember that FEMA REP program responsibilities encompass only off-site activities, which include state, tribal, and local governments. On-site activities continue to be the responsibility of the NRC. The accident that occurred at 3 Mile Island on March 28, 1979 was the most serious in U.S. commercial nuclear power plant operating history. The accident was caused by a combination of personnel error, design deficiencies, and component failures. As a result, sweeping changes occurred in the nuclear power industry. These changes involved enhancements in many areas, including emergency response planning, reactor operator training, radiation protection, and off-site communications. All told, these changes significantly enhanced public safety. In Minnesota Statute, Chapter 12, Section 21, it states that during the existence of an emergency resulting from an incident at a nuclear power plant that poses a radiological or other health hazard, the governor may assume direct operational control over all or any part of the emergency management functions within this state. Also in Chapter 12, Section 13, it states that, in addition to requirements imposed by federal law, the state director shall assess the need for protective actions required to mitigate the effect of an incident at a nuclear power plant. What this means is that for disasters such as floods and tornadoes, the local units of government are responsible for and in charge of planning, preparedness, response, and recovery. However, when the incident involves a nuclear power plant, the state government is responsible for and in charge of the planning, preparedness, response, and recovery efforts. Therefore, in Minnesota, the coordination of the REP program is the responsibility of the Department of Public Safety's Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. The HSEM REP program works to inform and educate the public, local emergency managers, and responders about radiological emergency preparedness. In addition, HSEM coordinates and conducts full-scale biannual drills and exercises with each nuclear power plant in Minnesota. There are 2 nuclear power plants in Minnesota, both located along the Mississippi River. There is the Monticello Nuclear Generating Plant located in Monticello, and the Prairie Island Nuclear Generating Plant located on the Wisconsin border just outside of Red Wing. Within a 10-mile radius of the 2 nuclear power plants are 5 counties designated as risk counties. These include Wright and Sherburne around the Monticello Nuclear Generating Plant, and the Minnesota counties of Goodhue and Dakota, as well as Pierce County, Wisconsin, around the Prairie Island Nuclear Generating Plant. This 10-mile radius is named the Emergency Planning Zone, or EPZ. In addition, there is a 50-mile radius termed the Ingestion Planning Zone, or IPZ. Within this ring are many more counties, including the entire metro area. The Radiological Emergency Preparedness Program in Minnesota is very large, and it has many moving parts. In the middle is the State Emergency Operations Center, which acts to coordinate all the state agencies that would be a part of a response to an accident at a nuclear power plant. The agencies include the Minnesota Department of Health, the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, the Department of Natural Resources, the Department of Human Services, the American Red Cross, Emergency Medical Services, the State Patrol, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, our federal partners, and military affairs. In addition to these state agencies, the 2 counties where the power plants are located activate their emergency operations centers, as would Sherburne in Dakota and the city of Red Wing. If an exercise or incident were to occur at the Prairie Island Nuclear Generating Plant, the Wisconsin State Emergency Operations Center would also activate, as would the Pierce County EOC, due to its location across the river from Prairie Island in Wisconsin. In addition, there are many ingestion counties in the 50-mile ingestion planning zone surrounding the 2 nuclear power plants that would be notified and activated. Field teams, coordinated by a command van, would be out tracking the plume and taking air, water, vegetation, and soil samples as necessary. These samples would then be sent to the Minnesota Department of Health lab to be analyzed. The Department of Natural Resources, the Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Health all have Department Operations Centers, or DOCs, that would be set up and activated to coordinate their responses. Reception centers would be set up to monitor and decon as necessary members of the general public who have evacuated. Also, hospitals and ambulances would be prepared and set up to transport and treat contaminated and injured individuals. And finally, if the emergency at the plant were due to a hostile action-based event, an incident command post and staging area would be set up to help coordinate the tactical response. Of course, a full activation as outlined here would only occur in a worst-case scenario. However, it is exactly this type of scenario that we exercise every other year for each nuclear power plant in Minnesota.